Well, greetings, visitors to the paper prison. It's once again Visitors Day here and we're going to start a new series here on the Comics Prisoner. I've been scouring the internet and finding really cool pieces of original art on there, but it's art that is the finished art. And I used to work, as a professional cartoonist, and one of the things I was able to do as a in the beginning as an assistant is I got to Xerox a lot of pencils and get Xeroxes of a lot of pencils. So I think I want to share some of these because we got some really great artists here that we can see the process. Um, it's the pencils. The pencils are going to be a little interesting because they're going to be kind of rare. I think you can find, instances even of the black and white ink stages, but I don't think you're going to find the pencils. We're going to start with what I think is my prized possession, which is in the 70s, there was a program of making backup stories for Marvel Comics. And it was done to try to, alleviate the deadline problems they were having and also to break in new talent. This is a really great one in that we have a gentleman who at the time was calling himself Mike Nasser, and I think he believe he calls himself Mike Netzer now, or maybe it was the other way around. And he was given a 6-page Two Gun Kid and Hawkeye story to illustrate. This is really an interesting find because I really think at this point even that Marvel and DC had very different house styles. I think DC was very much a Madison Avenue illustrator style, very photorealistic as much as they could, with a few detours into expressionism, a la Ramona Freud and some other people. At Marvel, I think they were very expressionistic for the most part. You had the Jack Kirby's, and even when you had a guy like John Buscema, who was a wonderful draftsman, he made sure that he was drawing, not just drawing realism, that there was some grandeur. And that's what I think Steve Root says it best. Or was it no, it was John Byrne that said Kirby brought grandeur to the pieces. So here we have now a fellow who, I don't want to say this disparagingly, who could be said was, if not a Neil Adams impersonator, highly influenced, or had taken or had made the intended decision, the intentional decision to draw like Neil Adams. Um, there's been a lot of cross pollination with Adams' uh, zeitgeist with Marvel with varying degrees of success. I don't think Adams can draw every Marvel character. I do not think he is suited for such. And we almost see an example of this here because I think these characters are the ones that fit best in the Neil Adams milieu. So let's just get into it. We have a start. We have a establishing shot of the Purple Man in his underground subterranean lair. We see here that even pencils that look like they're finished or tight, you cannot just ink these line for line and get something that's going to be printable. You had a master like Terry Austin inking this one, and if you see the actual printed inked piece, you can see that little bit of Reed Richards wallpaper in the background, that techno wall. He really had to make that work. He could not just follow it. He made things that's supposed to be symmetrical. He put differing textures so that not all of it just looked like one kind of metal. And then we get down to the second tier, and we have things that are pretty tight. I don't think Terry had to fix too much there, although in that third panel in the second tier, whatever that background thing is, which I think is the engine of a rocket engine of a hovercraft, I'm sure he had to like fix the ellipse there. That looked like it was very free-handed. Coming down to the bottom tier, we Daredevil's figure there is the one I think is the most cheated, and but maybe it was done on purpose for effect. That Neil Adams, people don't notice it because he just was just so good. There's a lot of caricature in his work, which brings the life to it. Because otherwise, if you're going to like just slavishly recreate nature in pencil, it's going to start looking like living death. They always say that if you trace a photograph, it just becomes living death. So there's a little bit of exaggeration in Dee Dee's form down there, and then you also have again in the second panel in the third tier, you have a very faked explosion, um, and I'm going to talk about how Terry had to make that shorthand, which is what it is. It's just shorthand for an explosion, and make it look like something. The very last panel on this page, I think it's very well drawn. However, the man-made articles on Kilgrave's costume, Terry had to do stuff on that to make it look like it wasn't just a cardboard cutout on his chest and metal. So we see. Oh, and I want to get back to it. I only have 4 pages of this 6-page story. We're starting on page 2. On page 1, Hawkeye and the Two Gun Kid are clopping along on their horses in a desert, and I'm gonna go back to that in just a moment. So they're tromping on the top of Kilgrave's subterranean man cave here, and there's just not enough not enough ground there to hold the horse up. So their weight, if you can see there's a hoof busting through the roof. So let's go to the next page. And oh boy, this is where we have to do a lot of suspension of disbelief, because these horses are taking, I think, a 30-foot drop, easy, if not 40. And they're not going to like basically have to be put down after this, because I would think that they would. I actually think that like Hawkeye and Two Gun could use them to break their falls. The horses themselves might have to be put down. Fortunately, Two Gun has guns and Hawkeye has his arrows. So anyway, so if we start looking now, I think the Neil Adams expression presages what's going to happen 20 years down the line in comics, and that the audience's expectations of what comic art is like someone who is getting illustrator or concept illustrator work in movies, which they are not. So, and I saw this in Neil's work on Batman. We actually had to do month to month work. But if you look at this, there's just the hint of machinery in the first panel on the bottom right. The rest of it is organic stuff that can be easily drawn by hand. Underground tunnel, and there's a lot more of that. Now we go to the second page, the second panel of this page. There's a little more machinery in the background, but it's a much smaller panel. And then your next panel, which is huge, has absolutely no background, which is kind of what Neil did on the Ra's al Ghul story. I mean, let's remember that. Where did Batman go to hunt down Ra's al Ghul after a few pages? Well, there's like the slums of Calcutta, which you can hand draw buildings because they're all like kind of falling apart and warping with environment. And then he went to the Alps or the Himalayas, uh, where again a lot of organic backgrounds where you can just hand draw these steeps and these mountains, and even like make Ra's al Ghul's face be in one of the mountains. It's very cool that way. And then where does he go next to hunt down Ra's al Ghul? Oh, the desert. Another place where the backgrounds are very, organic and easily drawn by hand. So I'm not going to. I'm not critiquing that or criticizing it or penalizing him, because it was wonderful comics and incredibly drawn what he did draw, but he had to take the shortcuts he had to be able to make that monthly hit. Nowadays, a comics penciler cannot do more than one book a month, and probably not for about 6 issues before the next guy has to pick up the baton and keep going. So we're gonna okay. So that was page 3. So we're gonna hit next one, page 4, and some more of what I'm talking about is in play. The background where Hawkeye overshoots a two-gun is just darkness, and then the next page there's just an exploding arrow, and the next page is a panel without a border, so you can kind of like cheat that, where two-gun, or rather Hawkeye's arrows takes two-guns pistols there. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about story here. It's great when you have characters that have guns and machine guns and swords and claws on their hands and knives. It's great until you actually have to like make them do something, because those things are made to kill. How often can you just hit someone with the flat of a blade? How often can you shoot guns out of the hand? Um, it's I really philosophically have a problem with that. I really think people would like think what's going to happen after you reintroduce it. We had to pull Two Gun Kid out of the past into 20th century, America, to make him even be here, and he doesn't work. So he basically has to be exiled into the West with Hawkeye as his sidekick. I was always wondering, were they trying to do a Lone Ranger and Tonto riff here, or vibe, or evocative? So we go down to the bottom half of the page, and there's Two Gun like leaping at Hawkeye because he's been disarmed, and so now we're just going into a fist fight because Kilgrave, the Purple Man, is controlling them with his mind powers, and while Two Gun can't stop fighting, he can give a command to his trained horse, who should have 4 broken legs here, but okay. Uh, and then, okay, so the next page, I do not have pencils on, but the horse follows the whistle command and attacks Kilgrave and knocks him out and distracts him. So Hawkeye gets his, okay, now we're flipping on to the next, which happens to be the last page, page 6. I did not have page 5, where the horse attacks Kilgrave and distracts him enough where our heroes can get their wits about them. And Hawkeye shoots like a flashbang, like screamer arrow to to disrupt Kilgrave's concentration, and he can't use his powers. So he grabs like a sci-fi ray gun before he can fire. Here we are on the second panel. This is very hard for me to catch, and I only really understood it when I saw the finished story, that Two Gun shoots the sci-fi ray gun out of Kilgrave's hand and making it explode in pieces. Again, this is where you can't even pretend that that's full pencils. Terry Austin had to go in there and make that work, make the pieces of that ray gun work. Here we have a bit of a problem with storytelling, because there had to be I'm sure there was a word balloon that said Hawkeye shot over Kilgrave's head to the wall behind him with a blast arrow, making the wall supposedly collapse onto Kilgrave. Now, the blast arrow is also starting. They don't know how much of the hideout's going to collapse on, so they start running. Now, if you look on, okay, this would be the third tier, that long shotgun panel. You look at the debris of the wall falling down. That is totally faked. That's not even shorthand. That is totally faked. And if you look at what Terry Austin did with that, I know he looked at a lot of Neil Adams finished pages, and it is a very good illustration of rubble and falling debris, and it looks real. It's believable. If all he did was follow that this would not be a good looking piece. Yes, it was a 6 page inventory story, but and I'm not going to criticize too much because so much of this is good as opposed to other pieces I've seen in my life. So the wall got blasted out. Hawkeye and Two Gun are on their broken leg horses somehow getting out. And, Two Gun says, "Hey, how do we know that we actually beat Kilgrave, or he used his mind control powers and made us think he did?" And Hawkeye says, "Ah, don't worry about it. We're out. We made it out alive. And can't you tell a happy ending when you see one?" Now, even though this was a inventory story, I'm sure he had some kind of deadline on it. And your deadline work is always going to be not quite as good as your sample work that you're trying to get the job with. I look at that jaw on the bottom mid panel on Two Gun. Something's a little off there. I'm not gonna, on the turn and then the line up toward the ear. I'm not gonna get into it. But overall, this is my prize piece in my collection of of comic book pencils. Although the next one I would say is a tie. You could say he was an impersonator of Neal Adams, but everyone does that. Some people impersonate or heavily influenced by Jack Kirby. Some are by Neal Adams. But I think this does illustrate that just as when Bill Sienkiewicz came over with his Neal Adams impersonation, they gave him just the right property to work on Moon Knight. I think these two characters were just the right characters for Mike Netzer to work on. And if you want to see how it wouldn't work, look at Bill Sienkiewicz's run on Fantastic Four. When you have a title like that is totally involved about the larger than life, the big, the big concepts. When you're just trying to be so photorealistic and grounded, it doesn't match. It's just too tonally apart from each other. Um, there has to be this expressionism that existed with George Perez, or how Rich Buckler knew how to interpret that and feel it through the Rich Buckler machine. For whatever reason, Neal Adams seemed to work within the Avengers fine, um, but I would not want to see him work on Fantastic Four, which actually happened not too long ago, and my opinion on that, remains. So I think these were like really great pencils from a young artist who was just getting started. Um, yeah, he should keep working. I remember first thing I saw was a Legion of Superheroes job by Mike Netzer, and I thought it was great. Um, a friend of mine who gave me these said he kind of out Neil's Neil. I think this was his best piece working on that. There was a Martian Manhunter backups he did that was just no, not as good as Neil. But I love these, and I hope you enjoyed looking at them with me. And I hope you'll join us next time because my next one. Well, I say these are my prized possession. The thing I was most excited about getting was pencils of John Buscema that I Xeroxed from a job that I almost worked on with Art Nichols. But for now, visiting hours is closed. I must go back to solitary confinement, and we'll see you next time. So, adios.